Greetings, this is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. On tonight's show, weekly contributor Brian E. Muhammad will give insight into the Israeli government's political reshuffle and what it means for Palestinians. He will also remind us of questions from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in his Part 12 of his 2013 series, The Time and What Must Be Done. Before we get into the top news, let's do a recap of the current events we've recently covered. Weekly contributor Dr. Akili Muhammad gave insight on the immune system and the environmental factors that affect our ability to fight off foreign invaders. Now, Dr. Akili, what would you say is the best way to take care of our immune system?
Well, I think, in a day and time that we live in now, I think the first part of having a good immune system is the way that we think. Here we are in 2021, and many people have been convinced that a vaccine is the best way to get you out of a situation that we're in. Well, if we evaluate that from a spiritual perspective, the first question we should ask ourselves is, how can a man or a woman, or this beautiful Black sister, Dr. Kamizia Corbin, go into a lab with her other friends and colleagues and produce something that we're going to inject into your body, and that's going to work better than the system that God gave you?
Right.
I will never, as long as I live, think that humans can do something better than God.
Dr. Akili Muhammad also spoke with me about the ongoing rates of COVID-19 infections, adverse reactions to the COVID-19 vaccines, and vaccine studies. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan warns us against taking the COVID-19 vaccine. He said, "We cannot let them bring anything to us that we don't dissect." Have our own virologists, scientists study the vaccines?
I think there have been those that are attempting to study the vaccine to the best of their ability. The problem is that we weren't included in the reality at its inception. And I believe that is the mandate that the minister gave us as healthcare professionals, is to go and do the research. But when somebody that has already started a process hands you a vial, that's not being included in the process. What were the steps? What were the actions? What were the ingredients used to put whatever you have in that vial that you're presenting to me? That's what the minister was talking about, from my understanding.
Another topic that came up in our discussion with Dr. Akili Muhammad was the CDC and government officials' relaxed protocols on physical distancing, use of PPE, and gathering in large groups. Is it a mistake to loosen these social distancing protocols, even for fully vaccinated people?
My personal assessment is absolutely it's a mistake.
Okay.
And I would qualify that statement by the reality of the VAERS system that continues to report many people having problems with the vaccine. Secondly, I would qualify that statement based on the information that I am hearing from my colleagues all over the country, whether they're working in hospitals and urgent care centers, regular medical offices, or the emergency room. Almost to a person, they're talking about the strange realities that they're seeing. And those are the words that they're using: strange, bizarre, when they're referencing the people that they're seeing coming in that have been vaccinated. And the number of people that they are seeing in the hospital with the actual infection seems to be more of the vaccinated people than unvaccinated people.
Anchor Willie Muhammad spoke with monthly contributor Dr. Asad El-Malik and returning contributor attorney Gavin Richard about how to break down the conduct of fans during NBA games and other sporting events.
The target of many of these unruly fans have been Black players. I haven't come across an incident where it was a white player who was spat on, a popcorn was thrown. Does race play a factor in these incidents, or is this just a case of an unruly fan?
Well, I think the racial element is always a factor. We have to keep in mind the NBA, like the NFL, is predominantly African American, filled with black players. I believe it may be 85 to 90% black in the NBA, and I believe in the NFL it's probably close to 80%. If I'm being, my numbers may be off, but I think that's an accurate description. The racial element, as I said, is always there. And bear in mind, too, you are in the middle of a pandemic still. We have not been cleared of the coronavirus, although people are anxious to get back, and to have a fan actually spit on a player. But this player, Trae Young, my understanding, did not even want to press charges. A precedent needs to be set with any fan.
Willie Muhammad opened the floor for Dr. Assad and Attorney Gavin to discuss the NFL's pledge to halt the use of race norming.
What's your overall thoughts about this practice?
You know, oddly enough, the practice was actually rooted in liberal ideas and written in many affirmative action bills, right? To start with these biased tests and to group each individual based on their race, or to compare different scores only to other individuals of the same race. This is Henry Clay 3/5 compromise. This is the idea that we are less than a human being, that we're only 3/5 of a human being. So we, as the brother Minister Farrakhan once said, we have arms, but they don't work a bill for us. We have eyes, but we can't see. We have ears, but we cannot hear. This is that type of idea about African Americans, that we're not fully human, that we're just a little slower, that we're in terms of our cognitive functioning, that we're just not as sharp, we're a little duller. We could run fast, and we're kind of strong, so they allow us to play these sports.
Dr. Assad and Attorney Gavin spoke on the recent parole denial of 83-year-old actor-comedian Bill Cosby.
Even though he proclaims his innocence, should Bill Cosby still have to participate in these institutional programs as part of the requirement that can even see if he'll be eligible for parole?
Had Bill Cosby actually met with the parole board, it could hurt his appeal chances. His appeal has been pending before the court since December, when oral arguments were heard on December 1st, 2020. To do a parole here, for him to go to parole, he would have to undergo counseling. He would basically have to show remorse for something that he claims he did not do. And if he is guilty, he would have actually, in my opinion, legal opinion, he would have actually gone ahead and done this so he could hurry up and get out. An innocent person would not do this unless they were just they actually did it, or they were trying to get out early. And he has stated publicly that he is willing to do his whole time because he's not going to admit to something that he did not do.
On Sunday's I Have a Testimony, Willie Muhammad spoke with Nzinga Muhammad, a visual artist, rising senior at Bennett College, majoring in interdisciplinary studies with a history concentration, and an ardent defender of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Can you share with us what some of those experiences were like for them to meet you and to ask you questions and things of that nature?
A lot of invasive questions, honestly. Those being, did your father make you wear that, or do you have to wear that? But a lot of those questions just came out of ignorance, honestly, because if you're a first introduction to something, they're gonna ask questions that you might not like, but that's their experience. I've been asked if I'm married, if I got married young. I got asked about Muslim women. Can we do things? Is it true that we can't ride in a car with men? Is it true that we can't walk anywhere without a man and I'm talking to them by myself? Is it true that you can do this or that? It was these questions that, okay, you got it from somewhere.
NNV anchor Naya Tai spoke with contributor Tony Muhammad about the Florida Department of Education's civic and history curriculum changes in schools, including the removal of critical race theory.
The Florida Department of Education is proposing changes to their civics and history curriculum in schools. What type of changes are being proposed? What potential impact would such curriculum changes have on the minds of Black and Latino children in public schools?
Well, the changes that are being not just proposed, but they're being implemented has to do with the instilling of patriotism. Every 10, 15 years, conservative forces tend to do this in education, and they've been doing it throughout the country, where they're concerned that young people are straying away from patriotism, and so now they're implementing more. How can I put it? They're trying to reinforce patriotism more and more and more, instead of truly addressing the problems that we are experiencing as a society and as a world in relation to us experiencing white supremacy, racism, and experiencing it on all levels in our society.
Tony Muhammad also discussed the impact of the national movement by educational institutions to change civics and history curriculum to promote a patriotic whitewashing myth on Black and Latino children.
In the whitewashing of history, white students have been systematically miseducated. Has the miseducation been designed to cushion white people from the guilt they might feel if confronted with the sins of their fathers?
Absolutely. The most common response that white people give when you're talking anything about race, they start going to the whole statement, well, I'm not responsible for slavery, or my family wasn't responsible for slavery. They came here in the beginning part of the 20th century or something like that. No, but you benefit from the system. And that's what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has taught us. There's a certain benefit that white people experience. And then so if you're reforming the curriculum in a way where the whole idea and the concept of race, Black people don't really see any true, real issues being discussed.
NNV News anchor Tariq X was joined by weekly contributor Nina Shabazz and guest Regional Student Minister Abdul Halim Muhammad in a discussion on urban planning, urban revitalization, sustainability, and the mitigation of gentrification.
And so we see that the influx of business industries, we see a lot of titans of industry moving their corporations. Elon Musk moving Tesla to Houston. Why is Houston so hot right now, in your assessment?
But, Houston still remains the petrochemical energy capital of the world. This also is the home of the Johnson Space Center, the largest medical center in the world. And in the Austin, San Antonio area, the Hill Country as it's called, it's now been transformed into the Silicon Hills, led basically by Dell Industries, and of course the universities and private and public investment. There are low corporate taxes here. There's no state income tax here in Texas. Texas is a right to work state, meaning you don't have to belong to a union in order to work in certain industries. It's a deregulated industry. Actually, this state is anti-federalist.
Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. When we return, NNV weekly contributor Brian E. Muhammad will join us to inform us on the current political situation in Israel and what it means for Palestine. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people, and upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now, 502-219-4848.
This
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
As Israel politically reshuffles the Zionist state, forming a new coalition agreement, there is doubt changes will improve conditions of the Palestinian people.
So I think it's a very dramatic moment for Israel and politics, and for Bennett himself. He's taking a huge gamble.
This man, Naftali Bennett, a far-right politician, announced Sunday he's joining forces with centrist Yair Lapid to dethrone Netanyahu.
God willing, together we can rescue the country from its tailspin and return it on its path.
It's a path full of roadblocks, according to Lapid, but one the country needs to travel. If this government is formed, he said, the key word will be responsibility. To take responsibility, to restore inner calm, not blame others, not look for enemies. After 11 days of bombings that killed more than 250 people, most of them in Gaza, a ceasefire is holding, allowing the opportunity for this new coalition. But this expert in Middle East politics says it will be difficult to form government because several small parties with very different views, including the United Arab List, will have to work together.
Joining us this evening with more on this topic is NNV Global View contributor Brian E. Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, Sister Rosalind.
Yes, sir. Israeli politicians in the Zionist state have announced a new coalition government agreement. What are the parameters of the coalition agreement?
Well, actually, the parameters of the agreement is still relatively unknown. I mean, except the fact that it's a weak marriage of convenience whose only agreement was to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu out of power. But, you know, the other part, I mean, that we have to look at very closely is that if this is ratified, this agreement is ratified by the Israeli Knesset or parliament, the two main leaders of the pact, Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett, agreed to split the prime minister post for 2 years each, with Mr. Bennett serving first, which is something we have to continuously look at very closely.
Okay, what is the likelihood that the agreement will be ratified by the Israeli parliament?
Well, unless something drastically happens in Israel, like maybe Netanyahu starting another war on the Palestinians, another hot war on the Palestinians, likely it's going to go through. This Sunday, they are looking to take the vote, this vote of confidence to ratify it. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like this vote will go through and there will be a new, if you will, government in Israel.
Okay. Now, the Lapid-Bennett. Why is the Lapid-Bennett coalition government being called a change government without making any changes?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. You know, Sister Rosalind, this, you know, political speak, you know, we have a saying that, you have politics and you have politricks. And with politricks and politics, there's always language that is not necessarily the case. So really what we have is, a change with no change at all, because the government, or this new coalition that's coming in, again, the two leaders, in particular, this Mr. Bennett, is actually worse, they say, if that can ever be a reality, someone worse than Netanyahu in terms of his extreme views against the Palestinians. So it's a change only in faces and players, but it's no change at all.
Is the Lapid-Bennett coalition government against a freeze on Israeli settlements?
Well, again, Mr. Bennett, Lapid, I don't want to say, because again, being that he's going to be taking the helm of the prime ministership 2 years from now, we have to deal with the reality of the extremist, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett was in the foremost voices in the Zionist state of Israel for annexing land and taking Palestinian properties. And in fact, he's on record of saying that the Palestinians should not ever have a state. And if he has it his way, that will never happen. This is the kind of person that we're dealing with right now with this Mr. Bennett.
Gotcha. And for the first time, there is an Arab party in the governing coalition in Israel. What role or influence does it have, if any?
Window dressing. And in fact, this group, this particular leader that's over this party, this Arab party of what they call Israeli Arabs. If you look at what Palestinians are saying, other Palestinian leaders, whether you look at Hamas or you look at other leaders there, and even the people on the ground, they actually look at them as sellouts. That's what they look at them as, because they made a deal in order to be part of a coalition of thieves, a deal where you are actually now part of the governance of stolen property. Remember, Israel is an occupier state, a settler occupying state. And so this is what you have joined on. Will you be against your people? And how can you be for your people in such a government that is so stacked against the Palestinian people? So the Palestinians are not really happy with them. And obviously it remains to be seen what they will do. But if the people who I spoke to, at least toward the article that I wrote, they're suspect.
Okay. Now, a name that we hear here and there and is coming back into the news, Netanyahu. Is Netanyahu discouraging support for former Israeli Defense Minister Naftali Bennett?
Yes. In fact, Netanyahu, again, the only thing that all of this group of 8 parties who came together to form this coalition government have in common, they have nothing in common, by the way. The only thing that they have in common that is clear is their desire to get rid of Netanyahu. And if anybody knows Netanyahu, he's what you call a Brooklyn Jew. I'm from New York, so I can say he's a Brooklyn Jew. And he is not going to just lay down. So he's going to be marginalized if they have it their way Sunday. But trust me, he's the kind of devil that he will be marginalized, but he will not be out of the mix. So yes, he's been working hard all week long against, in fact, getting other people who has to do this vote in the Knesset or the Parliament Sunday to dissuade them, and he's trying to see who he can pick off that will give a vote against it. But it don't look like right now. It look like they would have enough votes to put it through.
Now, Brother Brian, do you feel like Netanyahu has a true influence on what direction this will go?
Well, you know, it's strange because when you look at even Naftali Bennett was started with Netanyahu in the mid 2000s, you know. Then he formed a government, he formed a party, you know, and then he still worked in a coalition way with the governments that Netanyahu led. And then about 2019 or so, or maybe 2019, he walked away from that coalition. And now, no, he actually signed on to the coalition, and he was with them up until just a few weeks ago, until he signed on with this coalition that now has been strong enough to overthrow Netanyahu. So, yeah, Netanyahu, he definitely is working against this man. A lot of people who are around Netanyahu see Bennett as an opportunist, as a person who is ambitious in a negative way, because he will turn on you. So they see him as someone who betrayed Netanyahu. But again, Netanyahu is in so much trouble politically within this den of thieves, and that's what I call the Israeli government. I don't care who is part of it; it's a den of thieves, and there is no honor among thieves. Mm-hmm. So is he strong enough? Well, it looked like, you know, again, he's strong enough to give them hell along the way, but it looked like he's not going to be successful in pushing this thing back.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Brian. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. Then when we return, we'll have more on Palestine, and we'll also discuss questions from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in his Time and What Must Be Done series. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in part 12 of his 2013 lecture series, The Time and What Must Be Done, discusses the Israelis' treatment of the Palestinians. Returning to discuss this is Brother Brian E. Muhammad. Thank you for joining us again, sir.
Yeah.
Let's pick. Yes, sir. Let's pick up right where we left off.
Okay, great.
All right. We were in the last segment. We were touching on Netanyahu, and this will tie into the minister's series, "The Time and What Must Be Done." But why is Netanyahu facing corruption charges at this time?
Well, if you listen to him, it's the result of his political enemies, but you know, if you listen to him, but again, you cannot trust somebody who's part of the same den of thieves that he's now accusing of having, you know, being against him. The corruption charges that he's facing has to do with bribery, political influencing, doing political favors for people, you know, this type of thing, and which is normal in the world of politics. It's normal in Washington, you know, Israel's second capital, second home, Washington. It's a problem in politics, but this is what he's being charged with, this type of corruption, you know, of using his influence in politics to benefit private entities that he has private connections to.
And what is the likelihood of him being convicted?
Well, I don't know, because we know even with these trials, that the trial that he's under, you know, it's been a lot of starts. It's a few starts of obviously over the last year with COVID, that caused stop and go with the trial. It's hard to say, you know, again, because you're dealing with a den of thieves. If you're dealing with a den of thieves and you're in a courtroom that is also part of the governing body of your thievery, then anything can go. But what is for sure is that it does have the potential to damage him and his public life. Some are saying that it will end his public career. But again, I venture to think that, you know, he's dealing with like-minded devils like him. And so even if that puts a damper on it, I don't think that we're going to necessarily see the end of Netanyahu unless they bold enough to put him in jail.
Okay. Now, from apartheid Israel's beginning in 1948 up until now, have there been any substantial changes in its Zionist agenda and behavior toward the Palestinian people?
No, not at all. In fact, it has gotten worse as the decades move forward from 1948 to the 1950s, to the 1960s, throughout the turbulent 1970s, you know, and so forth. And of course, we saw what happened in the month of May, where they killed, you know, nearly 300 Palestinian men, women, and children. You know, they're right now, they are the International Criminal Court is looking at whether or not they committed war crimes in 2012, I think, no, 2014, where over 2,000 Palestinians, mostly civilian men, women, and children, were killed. And so this is what, you know, this is what we're faced with. So, yeah.
As Israeli politicians make adjustments to their government structure, what's the likelihood of things changing for the Palestinians in the near future?
Nothing. It won't change. It won't change. Because again, the people who are coming in, even this coalition, remember, this coalition are enemies of each other. I would say one thing they had in common was to overthrow Netanyahu, okay? But I would venture to say they had two things in common. That and their hatred of the Palestinian people and their thievery, again, of Palestinian land, you know, and marginalization of Palestinian people. These are the things they have in common with the one holdout, which is the Arab party that has signed on with them.
Right.
You know, and they only really needed them, not so much to be a power in this new coalition government, but they need their vote this Sunday. You know, so what the hell? I mean, you know, what are you doing? So no, nothing's going to change for the Palestinian people. In fact, because of what you see, it will get worse.
Okay. Now I'd like to pose the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's questions from part 12 of his 2013 lecture series, The Time and What Must Be Done. You mentioned this series in your recent article in the Final Call newspaper. So the first question is this: why would the Palestinians not want a separate state? Why wouldn't they want their own people that have been made vagabonds in the earth to have the right of return to their native land?
Yeah, that quote that's on the screen that you raised from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that was a rhetorical question that the minister was posing to the Israelis. You know, because when you look at from 1948, there has not been any not any peace, no justice for the Palestinians, and no peace in that land. And he at one point said back in 1984, when it was just 40 something years in, where he said, you will never have any peace, and you have never had any peace in 40 years because there will be no peace structured on lying, injustice, and thievery, and then using God's holy name to cover your dirty practices, your dirty, and he said, and if in religion, which is what you practice, not what you profess. So even though they are claiming to be Jews, which are the people of the Torah, that is a lie. These are people of the wicked Talmud, rabbinic Talmud, that they wrote with their own hands, you know, and then they're not even indigenous Jews to that land. These are Europeans who converted to Judaism, you know, and then was given that land not by the coming of a Messiah, but by the United Nations, the United States, Great Britain, and the rest of that ilk. And so, no, here we are where they're still wrestling with this problem. Now we're 73 years down the line. Israel, are you in peace? No. Are the Palestinians in peace? Not in your presence, because you are still annexing their land. You are still committing all manners of war against innocent Palestinians who's not even a standing army. They fight with rocks, while you fight with Western-made weaponry from America and other places that you have purchased, these high-powered weapons that you use on innocent Palestinian people. So the minister was raising a rhetorical question to them. Israel, you want peace. You want a nation to call your own. Why wouldn't the Palestinians not want a separate state?
Right.
Why wouldn't they want their own people that have been made vagabonds in the earth to have the right to return to their native land, which these Israelis are blocking from happening?
Well, why would you go ahead? Oh, well, why would you say, and we're speaking about Israel, why would you say that you want two nations side by side living in peace, but you never allow the Palestinians to be armed to protect the sovereignty of a Palestinian state? That was another quote that you mentioned in the Final Call newspaper, and you were getting ready to explain more about that. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on what you feel the minister meant by posing that question?
Well, he was raising the hypocrisy again. He was raising the hypocrisy. You cannot say that you want peace while you are the perpetrators of war. You cannot say that you want lands side by side while you are committing bloodshed and you are still encroaching on even what you have agreed would be theirs. See, they are liars. They are liars. And as the minister said, there will not be any peace until there's justice for the Palestinian people. There will not be any peace, because peace is never structured on lies and injustice and thievery. Until that is dealt with, there will never be any peace in that land. And the Palestinians, why should they compromise to even have the Israelis there when that's their land? Remember, this is an occupying situation, a settler occupier, and those who are now being occupied in their land. That's not just. That's not just. If you come and steal my home and you encroach and now you want to make a deal for me to live in a room in my home?
Right.
No, hell no.
Right. Right. Now, the minister also stated, you will never allow them, and he's speaking of the Palestinians at this time, you will never allow them the weapons that would allow them to protect their own airspace. You know that, and I know that. So what kind of sovereignty will they have with no ability to protect themselves from any outside force?
That's right.
Brother Brian. Yes, sir.
That's right. Because it goes to show us that they don't have any intention of Palestinian self-determination. The Israelis want it all or nothing. Now, these Zionists got the world so twisted that the whole world of Europe, including America, Europe's baby, will say, well, Israel, they have the right to defend themselves in this hostile neighborhood of enemies, right?
Right.
But is it strange that Israel is the only nation in that region, in that neighborhood, that has a nuclear weapon? No other nation in that region have a nuclear weapon.
Okay.
So you already have an advantage militarily. Then you get close to, when you add it all up, it's on the books, it's almost $4 billion a year from the United States taxpayers without fail. But when you add it all up, it really pushes it to nearly $5 billion. And this is not, that's just the United States. What do you get from the European Union countries? See, this whole thing is stacked. And this is what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is in the world to do, is to expose Satan and to announce that God himself has arrived to answer the call of the oppressed, those who have usurped our identity as the chosen people of God. It's over. And it's not because we're saying it, but the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is speaking as the mouthpiece of God in the world today. He's saying from God, the gig is up. It's over. And that's why you're slipping, Israel. That's why you are slipping in the world, on the world stage, America. Because God is now winding this thing down, and now he's in the heart of the people. And no matter what they do, the people are now rising up. Look at how they rose up last month all across the world against what the Israeli government did in bombing the Palestinian people the way they did.
Right.
That wasn't some organizations throughout the world, anti-war organizations, pro-peace organizations that called the people into the streets. The people are coming into the streets. You got more voices in the U.S. Congress that's checking Israel, that's checking the Biden administration, and it's only going to increase. It ain't because the lobbying is now turning the tide. There's a spirit in the people. We believe it's the Spirit of God. Because again, these are imposters there in that have taken the land of our Palestinian brothers. And by the way, the original people in Palestine are black people like you and me.
Right.
So when we look at this thing, we have to look at this from a bird's eye view. Not just this madness that's going on, like the change that is taking place within the Israeli government and all of that. That's a den of thieves problem. That's them fighting among themselves. Satan casting out Satan. But hell, it don't mean nothing for the Palestinians or for oppressed people worldwide for Satan to cast out Satan. For Satan to replace Satan with Satan. It's still Satan.
It's still Satan. Brother Brian, thank you again. And as always, for your insight on this topic. I look forward to speaking with you again next week as this continues to unfold.
Thank you, Sister Rosalind.
Yes,
May Allah bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today and for tuning in to National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Rosalind Parks with NNV News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App, NNV News.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Classes begin September 1st. To enroll, visit AsiaticMinds.com.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline is A Call to Action. Children's Health Defense files petition for Food and Drug Administration to remove experimental COVID-19 vaccines from the market immediately due to reports of more deaths and injuries. This FCN volume number 36 edition middle page article is a message by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan entitled, Blacks must no longer be a consumer nation. We must change to survive. To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call cover report.
Please make sure you leave your comments and questions in the comment section below. Follow us on Facebook, National Network View, and make sure to check us out on Twitter as well, National Network View. This is Sergio Gutierrez with National Network View, signing off.